Hello, today I'm going to be making the fresh tomato basil sauce with roasted almonds and garlic. The olive oil I'm using is this brand. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm using the Hy-Vee bay leaves, the Hy-Vee natural sliced almonds, and the two recipes I'm going to be using is one recipe is going to be roasted almonds and one recipe is going to be raw almonds. I'm using the Morton and Bassett fennel seeds. I'm not going to be using fettuccine. I'm going to be using this kind of pasta. Got my basil, thyme, onion, lemon zest, tomatoes, diced tomatoes, garlic, Morton iodized salt, stone mill crushed red pepper, and the thing I'm going to do is spread my almonds out on a sheet pan, half of my almonds out on a sheet pan, and preheat my oven to 350 degrees, and I'm going to cook them until they're lightly browned, which will be about 10 minutes. Almonds about to go in the oven, and the reason I'm roasting them before I add them to the sauce is it's going to enhance the flavor of the nuts and then make the sauce taste better. The almonds are in the oven roasting. I'm going to boil some water and put my tomatoes in the water and peel them and attempt to take the seeds out of them and still leave the pulp and the insides of the tomato. And I'm also going to cut my onion and garlic and I'm going to cut this recipe in half. So I'm going to do half of the recipe with the roasted almonds and half the recipe without the roasted. I'm going to place all 6 of my tomatoes into this boiling water, and then I'm going to get a cold bowl of water. And after the tomatoes have been in the boiling water about a minute, I'm going to quickly transfer them to the cold water so they can cool quickly and I can peel them. I'm using 6 tomatoes instead of 4 because these were the biggest tomatoes I could find at the store. Now I'm going to carefully transfer these tomatoes over to the cold water. It's been about a minute and I can already see that I cut the bottoms too, and the skin is already starting to come off. Tomatoes are now cooled, and as you can see, you really just can peel the skin off. So I'm going to peel the skin off all of these, and then almonds just came out of the oven and they're nice and toasted, slightly browned. So now I'm going to add a half a tablespoon of butter and a fourth of a teaspoon of salt and let that cool. Now I've added the butter and the salt. And once these almonds cool completely, I'm going to put them in the bowl. While the almonds are cooling, I have cut the tomatoes that I just peeled. And as you can see, I've taken all the seeds out, but I've left the pulp. So now I'm going to cut them up into size pieces like this. And I'll show you what I have. My onions, tomatoes, lemon zest, and garlic prepped for both of the recipes, the toasted almonds and the non-toasted. And now I am going to puree the almonds. I've added my roasted almonds and butter and salt mixture to my blender, and I'm going to puree this, and this is going to be the thickener for the sauce. So I'm not going to add any liquid to this, and hopefully it's going to puree well. I tried to get this to be more of a paste. I don't think there's enough in my blender. I think a food processor would work a lot better, or a mortar and a pestle. But I'm hoping this consistency is okay. And I might try to grind it up just a little bit more, but I just try and it kind of shoots all over the glass. Now that I have my almonds blended up, I'm going to boil some water in this pot and cook. Now that my water is boiling, I'm going to add half a tablespoon of salt and then add in my pasta. And stir constantly for 2 minutes and then let it cook for about 8 minutes. My pasta is cooking. I'm going to add some olive oil into this pot, and then I'm going to saute my onions, thyme, a bay leaf with my salt and pepper and red pepper flakes and fennel seeds. I'm going to saute this over low-medium heat until the onions are soft and translucent. Now that the onion mixture is soft and translucent, I'm gonna add the garlic and let that cook briefly, and then add the diced tomatoes and let that simmer on low to medium for about 10 minutes. The garlic cook just a little bit before adding the tomatoes produces a milder garlic flavor instead of an intense sharp one. The garlic has cooked just a little bit, so I'm going to add my canned tomatoes and let that cook for 10 minutes on medium to low. They're now done cooking, so I'm going to strain them and let them rest. This mixture has been cooking on low to medium for 10 minutes now, so I'm going to find the bay leaf and take it out, and then I'm going to add a half cup of this mixture to the blender with the almonds, and half cup of my tomato mixture plus my almond mixture has been blended a few times, and now I'm going to add another half cup of my tomato mixture and blend it until it forms a puree. And this puree is going to be my sauce thickening agent, and this is a great way to thicken sauces and not add a whole lot of calories and still make sure there's enough flavor so your sauce tastes good. The final puree mixture, and now I'm going to add this back into the pot with the other tomato mixture and add the lemon zest. And in this recipe I'm not going to be using the vodka. I've added the puree mixture and the lemon zest, and once this comes to a boil, I'm going to add the fresh basil and fresh tomatoes. And as you can see, because of the puree mixture, the total mixture has really thickened up. It almost looks like a gravy now. So now I'm going to add the fresh tomatoes and the fresh basil and turn off the heat. And this recipe, because it has such little fat, you might think it might not have very much flavor, but because we use so much garlic and the lemon zest, which are bold flavors, it's going to be very flavorful. Here's the final product of the roasted almond sauce, and my initial reaction is this sauce is a lot thicker than any other tomato sauce I've made, but hopefully it's completed the roasted almond sauce, and now I'm going to make the exact same sauce without the vodka, and I didn't use it in the first recipe either. And I'm not going to toast the almonds in this recipe. So I will start by blending up the almonds in my... And because my almonds aren't warm and the butter won't melt, I'm just going to add a half a tablespoon of olive oil in there and a quarter teaspoon of salt. And I added the olive oil in with the almonds just because I think the sauce needs a little bit of fat, because fat's where the flavor comes, and there's very little fat in this sauce, and so I want to make sure that I'm keeping the same amount even if there is just a little bit. And now that my almonds are blended up, I'm going to add onions, thyme, salt, pepper, my fennel seeds, and my crushed red pepper into the same pot. And I'm going to saute, and olive oil, and I'm going to saute those until the onions are soft. And I also added a bay leaf, so now I'm going to stir this around until the onions are soft and translucent on a medium heat. With this recipe, because I'm not toasting the almonds before I add it to the sauce, I think the flavor is not going to be as rich or taste as good, because roasting the almonds enhances the flavor. Now that the onions are cooked and they're soft, I'm going to add the garlic and let that cook just a little bit, and then I'm going to add my canned tomatoes and let it simmer on low to medium for about 10 minutes. And cooking the garlic before I add the canned tomatoes is going to create a milder garlic taste instead of a harsh one. And the garlic has cooked just a little bit, so now I'm going to add the canned tomatoes and let that simmer on low to medium heat for about 10 minutes. It has been 10 minutes, and this mixture has been simmering for 10 minutes. And now I'm going to take a half cup of this and add it in with the almonds to my blender, and I'm going to mix that up just a little bit. Now I have done the initial mixing. Now I'm going to add another half cup of the tomato mixture, and it's going to form, and I'm going to blend it up until it forms a nice puree. And again, this puree mixture is going to be the only thickening agent. And here is the final puree, and I did remove the bay leaf before I added any of this into the blender, just so you know. Now I'm going to add this mixture back into the pot and wait till it comes to a boil to thicken the sauce. And then I'm gonna add the lemon zest and the tomatoes for the final product. Now I'm going to stir this until the mixture comes to a boil. And again, pureeing some of this mixture with the almonds provides flavorful thickening instead of just thickening with starches or flours or cornstarch. And it also is a low calorie option that doesn't provide a lot of fat. And because we're using bold flavors like the lemon zest and the garlic and the almonds, that's going to be where most of our flavor comes instead of from the fats. And I've now added the lemon zest, and I'm still waiting for this to come to a boil. And then once it does, I will add the tomatoes and the basil. Now I've turned the heat off and I've added the tomatoes and the basil, and I'm going to mix this all together and then add in my remaining noodles. And here's the final product of the non-toasted almond tomato sauce, and I will let you know what I think about it. Overall, this recipe was pretty simple to make, even though there were a lot of steps to it. I definitely prefer the one with the toasted almonds over the non-toasted almonds. The flavor is just a little more intense and it seems like there's more flavors going on. But both of the recipes were great. They turned out wonderful. And I can really taste the lemon zest in both of them.